Listening Test 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between Harry and Andrea, two students who have just finished their final exams. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now, let's begin. Answer the questions as you listen. You will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi Andrea, how are you feeling now that exams are over?
It's fantastic to have finished, isn't it? And to sleep in every morning. What about you?
Well, I've been catching up on sleep too, but I've got a lot to do before I leave for England. Perhaps you could give me some advice. I've got a lot of things I can't possibly take back with me, but I don't know what to do with them.
Well, it depends on what sort of things they are and whether you're thinking of giving them away or selling them.
Well, almost everything. Furniture, the fridge and other kitchen stuff that I bought from the previous tenant. But the new people have already got what they need, so they're not interested in buying stuff from me. I can't afford to give it away, but I'm not sure how to sell it all. Oh, and there are some clothes and books as well.
Why can't you take them?
The books are really heavy. It's so expensive if you exceed the airline baggage allowance. And the clothes just won't all fit in my suitcase. It's amazing how much stuff I've accumulated since I've been here. Anyway, I don't think I'll need as many summer clothes in England as I have here in Australia.
I see. Well, there are several alternatives. First of all, you could put up notices around the university about the books. You know, on the notice boards in the Student Union building and in the economics department. Anywhere second and third year students will see them. People are always keen to buy cheap textbooks.
OK, what should I say on the notices?
Just put the titles, authors and price you want, your name of course, and maybe put your phone number on those little tear-off tags.
That's a good idea. And what about the furniture?
You could try doing the same thing, but usually students are away all summer, so they don't want to buy furniture now. Another place to try might be a second-hand shop. Someone from the shop will usually come around and give you a free quote, and then you can decide. But you don't usually get much money for that sort of stuff.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10.
Now listen and answer the questions.
Another alternative is to put an advertisement in the Trading Post. Do you know that paper? It comes out every week advertising things people want to sell. You have to pay to put the advert in and then hope people phone. Give them as much information as possible, and if they're interested, invite them to come and have a look. The hard part is agreeing on a price.
No, I haven't seen the Trading Post, but I should have a look at it. And I could advertise the fridge, the microwave and the furniture. But the kitchen stuff isn't really that good. You know, old cutlery, a few pots and pans and some plates and things. What shall I do with them?
Well, another option is to donate the kitchen things to a charity shop. You know, like the Salvation Army or St Vincent de Paul? Why don't you get a second-hand shop to give you a quote first?
Yes, I could do that. Find out how much they'll give me and then decide whether to sell them or give them away. But I've still got the clothes.
A charity shop will take them too, as long as they're in good condition. And even though you don't get any money, at least you know that someone who really deserves some help has benefited.
That's a good point. I'll advertise the expensive stuff, the furniture, and donate the clothes and kitchen stuff. Let's go and buy a trading post and you can help me write the advert.
Well, actually, I'm interested in buying the fridge and the microwave, depending on the price, of course.
OK, let's see how good you are at bargaining.
That is the end of section 1. You have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You'll hear a guide talking to a group of tourists about Buckingham Palace. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Now, of course, Buckingham Palace is instantly recognisable to millions of people around the world. As we pass the palace, I'd like to tell you a few things about the history of this famous building. We think the first house was built here around 1624. In 1674, that house burned down and a new one was built, called Arlington House after its owner, the first Earl of Arlington. Then, in 1703, the first Duke of Buckingham changed the design of the house and the name. It was then known as Buckingham House. The building we see in front of us now has undergone many changes since it was first built. The east front, which is the part we see from the road, was added as part of the work done by Queen Victoria and was completed in 1850. But the palace has remained pretty much unchanged for nearly 100 years. The last major changes to the structure were made by King George V, who, in 1913, had the east front redesigned as a backdrop to the large memorial to Queen Victoria, which had just been placed outside the palace gates. Since then, only minor changes have been made. I should point out, though, that the palace was bombed 7 times during the Second World War, most seriously in 1940, when the palace's chapel was destroyed. Today, of course, it is the home of the royal family, but that wasn't always the case, although they did own most of the land it was built on. It was George IV who turned it into a palace, doubling its size when he became king in 1820. He had inherited it from his father, King George III, who, in 1761, had become the first royal owner of the building, though it was still not used as the home of the royal family, just as a private home for Queen Charlotte. It was known as the Queen's House at that time. King William IV finished the work after his brother, George IV, died. But King William never moved into the palace. In fact, in 1834, he offered it as a new home for Parliament after the Houses of Parliament were destroyed by fire. The offer was not accepted, though, and in 1837, when Victoria became Queen, the house became the main royal residence in London. However, Victoria and her husband Prince Albert found the house too small, so they carried out building work to further enlarge it. This included building the east front, which I've already mentioned as the part we are looking at now. Victoria was also responsible for moving the Marble Arch, built as a part of the palace itself in the 1820s, to where it stands today, separate from the palace on the corner of Hyde Park. For 20 years or so, the palace was often the setting for huge banquets, dances, and musical performances. This period lasted until Prince Albert died in 1861, after which Victoria spent very little time there, and the palace was hardly ever used.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
When Victoria died in 1901, Edward VII became king. He was responsible for most of the decoration inside that exists today, and the dark days of the later part of Victoria's reign were fairly quickly forgotten as the palace came back to life. The palace has been in continual use by the British royal family ever since. A lot of people ask me if they can visit the palace. One way is if you're lucky enough to be invited to one of the 3 garden parties usually held every year. As many as 8,000 people attend these, although most of them do not get to meet any members of the royal family, and they don't see much of the inside of the palace. The garden is, however, quite spectacular, and it is the largest private garden in London, with an artificial lake, 30 different species of bird, and over 350 different wild flowers, some of which are extremely rare. Inside the palace, there are 240 bedrooms, 92 offices, and 78 bathrooms. There are also 19 staterooms, which are used for official engagements and ceremonies. Members of the public are only allowed to visit the staterooms, and then only in August or September when the monarch is not there. It's worth it, though, because there's a lot to see in the staterooms, including examples of some of the world's best art with works by Rembrandt, Rubens, and Canaletto. The tour, which lasts up to 2.5 hours, ends in the garden, where you can see more of the outside of the palace not visible from the road.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a student talking to her tutor about a presentation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 23. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 23.
Excuse me, Dr. Owen,
Oh, hello, Karen.
Have you got a few moments?
Yeah, sure. How can I help you?
Well, I've had difficulty finding data on the original question, and I was wondering if I could change my paper to Investment in Knowledge, comparing some European countries with the United States, and then with others throughout the world, including the OECD average. I found lots of data by way of graphs, etc.
Where did you get the data from?
From various sources, books and journals.
How are you going to present the material?
I am going to use the electronic whiteboard as suggested and do a blend of graphs, pictures, text and podcasts to illustrate my presentation.
It sounds very impressive.
Yes, let's hope the whiteboard works. But I'm also going to have a PowerPoint presentation for a backup, just to cover myself.
A backup is a good idea, but it's a lot of work doing everything twice.
It is, but at least I'll have experience of both. Before we talk about how to use the data I've selected, could you give me the names of a few websites I should look at for more specific background material? When you type in anything to do with knowledge, there are millions of sites listed.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 24 to 30.
Let's see. Oh, I'll print you off this list. Oh, there we go.
Right. Do I really need to study everything on these?
No, I suggest there are 5 or 6 you can look at. The one you have to go through is the IT department section on the university site, which is www.kmul.org. It has articles by all of us in the department and has links to useful information, so I think it is essential to look at this.
OK, I've already been on it, but I'll tick that one as a must-read.
And there's a site which is hosted by Pollock. It's investmentit.com. All you need to do is to skim the abstracts of the articles on the site. They'll give you a general idea about the effects of investment in knowledge.
Yes, that sounds good. It cuts out having to read everything. What about this one? knowledgejournal.com.
If I remember, it's not that useful. I would say that there are very few things that you need to read there. Then there's itknowledgereview.com. It's got loads of articles, but it's probably best just to read those that have come out in the last term or so.
Do you have to subscribe?
No, it's free from the university library. And another free journal online is itonline.com. I wouldn't say it's essential to read it, but it is beneficial. And so I think it is worth a look.
If you think it's useful, there is no harm in looking at it.
But nationalstatistics.com is worth looking at and trying out the links that it gives. I think these are probably enough to be getting on with.
I think so. There's another thing I want to ask about. How much material should I use in my presentation?
Avoid crowding the screen. If you have lots of information at one time, people will not be able to follow it and will just switch off.
That's worth remembering. I've been in lectures where there was too much detail on the screen and it was impossible to read quickly. But what about visuals? Do you think it's okay to mix visuals and text?
Visuals are very useful, but they must be relevant, or else people will get confused about what they mean and why they are there, and they won't pay attention to what you are saying. So be careful. From what I can see, you have the makings of a very good presentation.
Thank you.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4.
You are going to hear a series of lectures on Irish culture. Listen to the first part of the lecture. As you listen, complete the notes below.
First, you have some time to look at the questions. Now listen and answer the questions.
River dance is an expression of modern Irish culture, but it is based on a culture which had its golden era from the 6th to the 9th century. Before that period, Irish culture was oral and based on a love of complicated stories and poetic styles. But in the 6th century, something wonderful happened. Writing was introduced by missionaries. From then on, the culture of Ireland began to develop in ways impossible before and had considerable influence in Northern Europe in the period up to the 9th century. With the invasions which began in the 9th century, this golden age collapsed and there never was any real recovery. There were no wealthy kings to sponsor the poets and scholars, so the tradition survived only in a form which the peasants liked. The love of story and song did not die, but no real attempt was made to find a distinctive Irish style until the end of the 19th century, when Irish nationalism began to influence writers, in English called Anglo-Irish literature. There are many famous writers from that period. There is also William Butler Yeats, George Bernard Shaw, and Samuel Beckett, all of whom have received the Nobel Prize for Literature. In all, Ireland has received the Nobel Literature Prize 4 times. When you consider we have only a population half the size of Beijing, you see how unusual that is. Now, let me talk about the music. The Irish love of music has succeeded in surviving the change from Irish, the native language, to the language of the invader, and has once more begun to blossom and become influential outside the country. Irish music was reduced to being the language of the country people and was dying out as people moved to the cities. Young city people did not want to listen to peasant music, although we were all told it was important. Some efforts were made to make it attractive to city people, but largely without success. More recently, this has begun to change, and since the 1980s has taken off. But modern Ireland has been looking for more than just a revival of traditional music. Many of the most famous popular singers in the world are Irish: U2, Enya, the Cranberries, and many others. There are 10,000 people employed in Ireland in the music industry. River dance is an expression of that new interest in the old and that ability to understand the new.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.